So I saw Alien Covenant twice during the previous weekend, and there is quite a lot wrong with this film. And I wanted to get this video done like last weekend, but you know what happens? Laziness. And when laziness happens, you just don't want to get anything done. Initially, when I first saw this film, I was like, okay, yeah, it's an enjoyable film. It's more fit towards the Alien fans because, you know what? No matter what anybody tells you, it's okay to be a fan of this particular series. And then the second time rolls around, I already know what's gonna happen. I already know the twists and turns. And that experience, I liked it way less than my first experience. I was like, holy shit. This is a pretty bad film. And it's a real bummer that whenever you revisit a film in which like the first time you watched it, you really liked it, and then the second time you're just like, ah shit, it's not as good. You don't want that in any film that you encounter. But then for Alien Covenant, like for me at least, this is the newest example in any film that has some sort of replay value. It's not as great as you expect it to be. So I'm gonna break this film down little by little as to what Alien Covenant did wrong. And as always, before I do that, I'm gonna leave a huge spoiler warning. So if you haven't seen Alien Covenant, go watch it, go form your own opinion. And if you haven't, you just don't care, let's talk about some Alien Covenant. Okay, so first things first is the misbalance of tone. And I know there's a bit of divisiveness when it comes to the previous film that Ridley Scott did in the Alien universe, which is Prometheus, for a good amount of reason, actually. You have the positive side where it's like, oh yeah, it's so philosophical and the God complex, it just made you think, it was so great. And the negative side was like, well, nothing really happens. There's no xenomorphs, and it was replaced by these black goo zombies. Ridley Scott more or less listened to the negative side where he's like, you know what, I want to create a film where I can focus on the philosophical elements, but at the same time, give my fans what they want by giving them the xenomorph goodness that they have been craving for. Now, when you have the philosophical stuff blending in with an all-out thrilling monster film, doesn't really mesh that well together. I would say about like 15 to 20% of the film, that's when it gets into the Prometheus stuff that a lot of people didn't really care for, and that was when Walter meets up with David. They actually have a pretty cool conversation about creation and how certain beings aren't meant to serve, where David's all like, yeah, in you creating a simple tune, you have that ability to create, where Walter counters back and he's like, yeah, if there's a flaw in that melody, the whole system can just crumble down. I'm just paraphrasing right here. And me personally, I love that philosophical conversation that these two androids were having, but it's kind of weird how these two robots are the most human characters in the entire film. Kind of let that sink in for a second. And then later we get into this really weird Terminator 2-like battle where these two androids are throwing each other, and all that philosophical stuff that they said previously is just thrown out the window as they're saying these cheesy one-liners. Is it entertaining to watch? I mean, yeah, sure, I guess. Like, take it for what it's worth. But if you're going into the film having a thinking mindset just how Ridley Scott intended it to be, then make sure it's consistent. Okay, now secondly are the characters. Now this one's pretty interesting because quite everybody was pretty stupid. Unlike most of the main characters in the Alien series, like how some of them are scientists, but instead of them being scientists, they are colonists. They're going on this huge colonization mission. Look, but even an average Joe like myself can figure out that some of these characters make some of the most illogical, dumbest decisions that any character has made in any film. When you come across a planet that just so happens to slip under your guys' radar, don't go immediately investigate it, let alone touch everything. I'm dead ass serious. Like, even when the xenomorph is out on the loose, you have some of these characters touching the things that they're unfamiliar with, and they're just splitting from the group. And when it comes to the part when they do die, you just don't really feel sorry for them. And to prove my point, like, there was a scene where Billy Crudup meets up with a girl in which she splits up from the group, and because of that, a xenomorph comes from behind her and bites her head off. He sees David talking to that xenomorph, and Billy Crudup, surprisingly smart enough, kills that xenomorph. He points the gun at David and is like, you're gonna tell me everything or I am going to kill you. And David's like, oh yeah, sure, come follow me. David eventually reveals that he is the one that's genetically creating all these xenomorphs and spends about 5 minutes explaining everything to Billy Crudup's character. Now, if I was Billy Crudup's character, I would have shot and killed David right then and there, because if I met up with the guy that created these beings in which said being just killed my friend, I would instantly kill him. That's just me. But of course, he doesn't do that. But instead, David leads him to the dark chambers of his secret laboratory, and there we see like the eggs that the facehuggers are produced in. And just stupid Billy Crudup's character, he's never seen these eggs in his life. He walks up to them, he's like, oh, are these perfectly safe? And David's like, yeah, sure. These are perfectly fine. Touch these. There's something to look inside. It's perfectly safe. And then, of course, the facehugger comes out and then gets the guy, and then the alien pops out from his chest later on, and I'm just like, you dumb fucking idiot. Why? Again, any person with common sense can figure that out. Like, for one, don't touch everything that's in an unfamiliar setting. 2, don't split up from the group. And 3, don't trust anybody within the first 5 minutes within meeting them. It follows these really cheesy, cliche horror moments, and you're like, this is not the 70s anymore. This is 2017. Give us something better. Come on. Okay, now number 3 is the Xenomorphs. They found a way to not make them terrifying. It was really weird. I don't know how they did it. This is more of like a fan complaint because I'm more or less on their side because, like, I'll look at it this way. I'm a Star Wars fan, right? You see all those Star Wars posters right there, and then, actually, no, it's Guardians of the Galaxy poster, but I have more Star Wars posters over there. Like, I'm a Star Wars fan, right? So you have the original films that has Obi-Wan Kenobi explaining the Force to Luke, and he's like, oh, the Force is an energy field that surrounds us, penetrates us, and binds the galaxy together. That in itself is so cool because it's like, that's the Force. Like, you don't really need a further explanation as to what it is. Just show what it is. Until we get to the Phantom Menace where Qui-Gon Jinn is explained to Anakin, it's like, oh yeah, the Force comes from these cells called midichlorians that runs through your bloodstream. That pissed a lot of fans off. Because that's more along the lines of, you're telling us what it is, just show it. That's how I feel like these fans are gonna feel with these new Xenomorphs in these new Alien films. They aren't some crazy intergalactic alien that these crew just so happens to stumble upon, but instead, they're these genetically modified species that an android created, and that's why they exist. I'm just trying to put myself in their shoes because it's like, how would I feel if they put something like that in one of my favorite film franchises? Well, they already did, but probably wouldn't be too happy. But let's just throw out that whole fan perspective and let's look at how does this work as a film. And quite honestly, it doesn't work too well. Because they really shove it in your face as like David is the one that created these Xenomorphs. Because if you haven't seen the previous film Prometheus, you're not gonna know what the hell is going on. You're just gonna be asking, well, how does David defect from humanity? Who is Elizabeth Shaw? And what happens to the Prometheus? You're gonna be asking those questions. And throughout the entire film, you're probably gonna be blind, possibly. But then again, like, what sequel doesn't require you to have some sort of prior knowledge to the universe previously? I mean, that's just how it is nowadays. Now, those were like the inexcusable aspects to Alien Covenant, because rather than like the story, the characters, and certain themes, which are like the meat and potatoes, there's a little bit to take away from this film. Ridley Scott just knows how to handle practical effects and makes you feel like you're on a different planet with all these cool and unique sets. That was one of my huge problems with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, it's like this overuse of green screen, but Alien Covenant, you feel like you're on that different planet. You see the effort being put into these production designs. It was truly a visually stunning film. It was great to look at, but as the film overall, I cannot call it good. Well, with all those things being said, that's what I think about the film, but I also want to know what you guys think about Alien Covenant. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you think it was okay? We can have that discussion down below. And as always, guys, don't forget to follow me on all social media such as Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. All the links will be linked down below. Keep in contact with me. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And as always, guys, may the Force be with you.